Hello YouTube, back again with another video. This time we're going to be playing a custom duel. Normally I would say non-custom, but this time I'm going to go ahead and be heading back and playing my Egyptian God Prophet deck. But the reason why I'm doing this, I want to be able to showcase you the cards that I haven't got to use yet, which happen to be the Egyptian God Disciples that I created. So he's playing a deck that I'm not even too sure of, to be honest, but this card seems awesome. We get to draw, we get an extra additional draw during our draw phase, which is nice. And this card, when I first read this effect, I was like, okay, this card doesn't seem that. But when you read the last effect, I was like, okay, that's insane. Why would a level 4 monster even need an effect like this? I understand like there are a lot of broken decks that prevent you from playing, but it's like, damn, it could at least banish all monsters or up to 2 cards on the field. Or if this card just leaves the field while your opponent controls more cards than you do, then you can banish all cards on the field. But this card has no restriction. It's like pretty much a effect that you can pretty much use all the time. That isn't a once per turn, which is insane. And besides that, I'm going to my Slifer's effect. So although he may have a crazy effect, because what happens is that he adds anything that has either Ra or Slifer Obelisk in its name from the deck to hand, and then if you do, you draw 1 additional card. But in return, the cost is you cannot special summon monsters except monsters that have Slifer, Ra, or Obelisk in their name. And I'm letting my opponent be aware of that effect, since I already used the effect to add and draw, which is definitely a really good restriction in my opinion, because you'll notice how easy it is to summon the Egyptian gods, especially with the new support they created. And I was worried here when I saw the hand drop. I was thinking it's gonna stop me from playing spell, but at least I get to play my cards, so which is nice. I confirm that 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 I allow him to switch the card from his deck to his hand. And I have no response, but the only response is that I can be able to discard cards and add divine type or divine beast type or divine attribute monsters from my deck to my hand, and I'll be sending 3 cards from my hand to the grave to add the Egyptian God Prophets, for example, Slifer, Ra, and Obelisk. And normally I would be able to special summon Slifer, but the issue is that I can only summon divine attribute and divine beast type monsters. But because Disciple isn't one of those cards, he doesn't have the same type or the same attribute as one of those monsters. Unfortunately, I can't summon Slifer. I'm talking about the Egyptian God Prophet Slifer. So, but what's crazy is that I still get 2 additional draws thanks to divine power, but as a cost of discard 1. And then I'll be able to special summon Ra by sending the Winged Dragon of Ra from my hand to the grave. And I won't pay 1,000 to give him attack, but instead I'm going to use the 1,000 to get rid of his monster. And it's funny because, and then I do have a response to his effect. And then that's the only time I noticed the effect. The moment I popped that card, I didn't realize he had the banishing effect, which would pretty much get rid of all my cards on the field. But then I do have a response with Slifer and Ra, because even though I have to get rid of my spells, I do manage to come back and regain my field. So, but instead I'll be summoning out 3 Winged Dragon of Ra, ignoring their summoning conditions, and their attack do become 3k, but only one of them can attack directly since I special summon 2 or more. Let's fast forward here. And then I'll be using Slifer's effect, since I chained with his effect, to special summon 1 Egyptian God. An Egyptian God that has either Obelisk, Slifer, or Ra in its name, and 7k. And he's making this a big deal. He's claiming my card is broken, but look at his. He's like totally not busted. I'm wondering why he's so upset when he already had a busted card in the field, which he literally just normal summoned. And I'm guessing he's a hypocrite. That's wild to make those kind of claims when he normal summoned a card that pretty much gets rid of all your opponent's cards with no restriction. So he's telling me I'm unfair, but he's only mad because he's losing. That's it. So, but I'm wondering what he's gonna do with this card. I'm guessing it doesn't have a broken effect either. But I mean, I'm being sarcastic, so Either way, we're gonna find out. And this is where he at least he admits defeat. Though I do appreciate he didn't, although he kind of he went off on me. At least he was willing to admit defeat, which I do respect. And I did give my monster restriction. The thing is, like, that's literally the whole purpose of the Egyptian god prophets. Is when they do leave the field, they special summon their Egyptian god counterparts, the big divine beast monsters. And the reason why I bring that up because normally they have like this really nerf effect where even when they do get special summoned, like you kind of have to force them to send them to the graveyard. So it would have really sucked had it been something like the Obelisk or Slifer, since because if you do manage to special summon them, even if it's all three of them, you kind of have to force them to send them to the graveyard during the end phase. But either way, it makes it that much worth it, because even though they have to leave the field during the end phase, at least you have something, at least you have ways of actually doing amounts of damage to your opponent. If they have ways of like disrupting you, and you need to be able to overcome that. That's because that's the whole purpose of the Egyptian gods. Because overall, back then, even now, especially if they didn't have this support, like the thing was, they could not compete whatsoever. They were too bricky. You had to give her 3 monsters on the field, and they were basically normal summons. These are monsters that were only meant for tribute summoning. And this deck pretty much allows you to get access to them a lot more easier and be able to use their whole potential. This actually gives the deck more potential now, because now we were expecting the Egyptian gods to be more viable, but these cards are able to do that, are capable pretty much making the deck prove that they aren't as useless as they seem when you have cards that can pretty much help support them specifically. And that's what people are forgetting, is that this entire custom archetype is meant to help the gods. And although I understand people are complaining that you can easily summon you can pretty much swarm your field with 3 copies with ease, but at least it's not to the point where you can instantly attack all 3 of them for a game. Where that's why I made sure to nerf the effects to the point where only one of them can attack your opponent's life points directly, but at the same time it's to help you get around certain boards, especially because your opponent loves to swarm the field and play a bunch of Omni Gates. So that's the purpose of the archetype, is to get around annoying decks, especially decks that pretty much prevent you from playing. So at least if they're going to prevent you from playing, you need to find ways of getting around and be able to enable yourself to be able to compete with your opponent, and especially with how amongst the meta, especially with how competitive the meta is, on top of being very toxic and preventing you from play. Especially if it's going to prevent you from playing, then you might as well try to find ways where you can actually play the deck. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like if the whole point is to stop you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh, then you might as well get around and try to prevent that. You might as well try to get over their board and ensure that you have an opportunity to play. That's what the whole purpose is to give your deck an opportunity to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh. Because I feel like the Egyptian gods definitely are a lot valuable as they seem with the cards they created, and deserve that support. So if even though I may be exaggerating, these cards definitely will not exist. But this is from my perspective, is that I feel this is the only way if people want, because like I said, the Egyptian gods were considered really interesting cards. They're very expensive, they're very valuable, and they need this kind of support so they can it can prove their name worthy as Egyptian gods. And that's my point. Hope you guys understand either way. But like I'm already done with this video. Again, hope you guys enjoy the video. Be sure to check for more upcoming content later in the future. Be sure to check your notifications. Comment, like, subscribe. Thank you.